We begin the hour with a dramatic C-suite shake-up at Boeing. The chief executive, Dennis Muilenburg, is stepping down from the company as it continues to grapple with the fallout from its 737 MAX crisis. The plane has been grounded since March, following two fatal crashes that killed 346 people. Boeing's current chair will take over as chief executive. Clare Sebastian is with me now from New York. And this is an interesting one, isn't it? Why now?
Well, Richard, the events seem to have precipitated over really the last week. You'll remember it was this time last week that Boeing made that almost unprecedented decision to suspend production of the 737 MAX, which has been grounded since March while they wait for recertification. Then we had the issues with their Starliner spacecraft. Their mission failed on Friday. That actually landed safely on Sunday. But we're hearing a little bit more from my colleague Christina Alessi, speaking to a person familiar with the board decision about what happened behind the scenes. According to that person, when the board met last weekend about production of the 737 MAX, they discussed concerns about how Dennis Muilenburg had tried to accelerate the process of recertification with the FAA, that he had apparently got, in the words of this person, sideways with the regulator, and that had confused some customers. So the FAA seems to be a key component of this. As for them, their reaction this morning, they say they don't comment on personnel decisions, but they are continuing to follow, they said, a thorough process for returning the Boeing 737 MAX to passenger service, Richard.
But on that point, that does explain the last paragraph of that statement from the FAA, which I helpfully have here. We expect that Boeing will support that process on timeframe by focusing on the quality and timeliness of data submittals to the FAA, as well as transparent in its relationship with the FAA as safety regulator. This sounds like there has been some sort of nose out of joint, and arguably Muilenburg pushing too far and too fast.
Yeah, and I think there's sort of an acknowledgement of that, Richard, in Boeing's own statement. They have said that transparency, they're going to have a renewed focus on transparency going forward. They note that in particular when it comes to communication with the FAA. So certainly there have been reports of tension between Boeing and the FAA as this has gone on. Boeing consistently said, of course, that they wanted to see the MAX cleared to fly by the end of the year. The FAA has consistently said they're not on a set timeline and pushed back against that. So we've seen the kind of communications between the two diverge a little bit. I think that if you look closely at Boeing's statement, they are now saying we're going to come close together and we're going to be clearer and more transparent in the way that we deal with this.
The problem with all of this is that at the end of the day, getting the plane back in the air, they've done the fix, they've submitted or partly submitted it, and now they're onto the testing. It's hard to gauge exactly how close they are.
Well, when we heard from the FAA Administrator, Steve Dixon, in recent weeks, Richard, he said there are 10 or 11 milestones left to clear before they do this. Now, we don't know out of how many, we don't know how significant those milestones are, but we know that there's still a lot of work ahead. It's not just the software fix. Once you've done that, you need to then look at pilot training and whether that needs to be changed or updated. And then it's not just the FAA, Richard, it's the other global regulators that need to approve the plane to fly. Right now, there's a potential situation where it could be approved to fly in the US, but Europe or China even might delay it further. So it's going to be a big process. And of course, each individual plane needs to be looked after and cleared through various processes as it goes back to the skies. It's going to be a long process, even if it is eventually cleared to fly again.